Good evening and welcome to the Orange Water and Sewer Authority Board of Directors work session this Thursday, December 12th, 2019. Moving to the announcements, Bruce Runberg will be absent tonight. Does any board member know of a conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest with respect to any item on the agenda tonight? On Thursday, January 30th, 2020, the Board of Directors will hold a special meeting to discuss the long-range water supply plan at 6 p.m. in OWASA's community room. Announcements by other board members. Jody Eimers.
On November 21st, the Orange County Climate Council had its third meeting here in the OWASA community room. Mary Tiger attended the meeting, and I also attended subbing for Ray DuBose, our OWASA rep. Board rep. The group nominated a vice chair from the community, adopted principles of environmental justice as our guiding environmental justice principles, and provided feedback to help draft a mission and vision statement for the group. In addition to OWASA's energy management work, I recommended that OWASA acknowledge our forest management effort as a notable climate action. The group is still getting its footing, and we look forward to working with the group on common climate initiatives in 2020. The next meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday, and Mary Tiger will represent OWASA at that meeting.
Okay, thank you, Jody. Bob Morgan.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. On Wednesday, December 11th, the board held a special meeting with Slavin Management Consultants to discuss the recruitment, assessment, and selection process for the OWASA next executive director. To kick things off, last night we were pleased to hear about Slavin's productive day meeting our employees and touring our facilities. The board had a very productive discussion with Slavin about the process and schedule to select Ed's replacement. We expect to advertise the position in mid-January, and the board expects to make a selection in April or early May. And I invite any of the other board members to make comment if they want to add to that.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Announcements by staff. Linda Lowe has a couple of announcements.
Hello, Linda Lowe, Communications. Well, I'm very excited about this announcement. You have been so supportive about communications and community engagement for OWASA in approving the communications plan for the year, and also bringing on board a communications specialist to help keep moving the needle on our outreach and engagement. And I'm so pleased and excited to share with you that Blake Hodge, who the name might sound familiar, not because he's related to another Hodge who's a reporter, who I understand is also quite prolific in the community, but has been the news director for WCHL for the past 5 years in the local community, and prior to that has been a reporter and news director at a number of other community radio stations across the region. Blake is such a great writer, such a wonderful representative for us. He's been with us for a week and a half now. And I have to say, the first time I met Blake was when I was maybe a month into my job. And, you know, my job is to reach out and develop relationships. So I emailed the news director of the local radio station, who I knew would be a key stakeholder, out of the blue, and said, hey, would love to get to know you and have coffee with you and learn more about what you're looking for in terms of information. And within the first 5 minutes, I remember thinking, this guy emanates kindness. So not only is he so talented, but incredibly kind, and we're really lucky to have him on our team. So I'd just like to introduce Blake and invite him to come up here and introduce himself in person.
Hey, how are y'all? Thank you very much for having us tonight and for bringing me onto the team. I've had a week and a half, as Linda said, to get to know everybody here a little bit more. I've had some interactions with a bunch of the staff during my time at WCHL, so it wasn't a totally new environment, but I'm excited to get involved and see where we can help out here and keep telling the stories about what OWASA is doing in the community, all the great things that are going on behind the scenes every day to keep delivering that high quality water to our customers across the area, and let them know about some of that work that's going on. So I've gotten to know a lot of the team members so far, and excited to get to know more of them as we continue to make rounds. But I'm excited, and thanks to everybody for having me here tonight. And if you need anything, just let me know. We'll see what we can do. Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard, Blake. I had the pleasure of meeting Blake Monday, because I was passing through, and he was sitting there in an office that was otherwise empty. And I found out he was an App State graduate, and then the conversation immediately turned to football. And Linda sat there and listened to us talk about football for 10 minutes.
And I learned a lot.
But enjoyed it very much, Blake, and welcome aboard again.
The second piece of information I have to share is just a short update regarding our new website launch. So as the next step or evolution of our brand refresh, which you've seen us roll out in our report card and other pieces of information that we've been sharing in the community, we are very close to relaunching our new website. It's looking great, and I will be sharing more details about that via email in the following days, so keep an eye out for that. And then finally, the next piece of information I'm here to share, and I'm really happy to be sharing this with you because, as you know, this is my last board meeting, and it's been such an honor and privilege to work with all of you. I've learned so much from each of you. This is going to be one of my sort of best projects/memories that I take with me, is helping and working with everyone at OWASA to create the Youth Water Academy. So you approved the communications and community engagement plan, which included this concept. So as you may recall, in the spring of earlier this year, we did a pilot project where we created this academy, 4 sessions, and worked with the school board to spread the word. And we had 7 young people participate, grades 9 to 12. And the feedback was really positive. So we thought, oh, definitely, we need to do it again in 2020. And then the school board contacted us and said, can you run it again in the fall? And we chatted internally. We said, yeah, okay, let's do it. And we also said, let's add a 5th session based on the feedback we got from the first academy, where they wanted to learn more about sort of the infrastructure and the nuts and bolts of how the system works. And we promoted it the same way, you know, through our networks, through to teachers and stuff. And we were really so happy. We received 21 applicants and 18 people participated with all 5 sessions. So what that tells me is that because we didn't promote it any differently, it tells me that we're getting traction in the community with our engagement. When we offer something up and programs to share, people are maybe more receptive to what we have to share. And so I'm just going to share with you the highlights of OWASA's Youth Water Academy, which finished last week. So these are the fall 2019 Youth Academy ambassadors. I photobombed the photo. I'm not actually part of the academy. I'm one of the mentors. But they represented all grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 high school from all of the high schools in Carbo and Chapel Hill, and also a homeschool student. A really diverse, eclectic, high-energy crowd. And in terms of at OWASA, these were the staff that mentored these young people throughout the program. So definitely cross-functional representation across all departments. And I knew that we had planted really great seeds, not only externally, but also internally, when before we rolled out this fall academy, somebody knocked on my door in distribution and collections, who is sometimes a bit shy, and said to me, hey, I want to be involved. I thought, oh, success. You know, we're really reaching it internally as well, because it's really cool for us to be proud and share what we do, and know that the kids think it's cool. So I don't know if that font is a bit small, but this is a summary of the 5-week program. So week 1, they toured the water treatment plant. Week 2, they toured the wastewater treatment plant. Week 3 was about water governance. Week 4 was about infrastructure, distribution, and collections. And week 5 was a hands-on water build with engineering. And if you can't see that, it's okay, because I'm going to give you a visual for each week. So they toured the water treatment plant week 1 with Tiffany and Chris in the lab. And what was great about what we did each week was each of the staff that mentored the young people, not only did they share their water knowledge and industry knowledge, but also their career path. Because a lot of these, young people are thinking about, what am I going to do? And what is my career goal? So we're planting new seeds in that way. Week 2, we were at the wastewater treatment plant. Ronnie Weed, one of our operators there, gave the tour. This is him inviting them to feel what biosolids feel like. I wanted to mention that while we were taking the young people around, we also showed them cool behind the scenes tidbits that nobody else will ever hear. So this is us, and this is Ronnie showing them. So at the wastewater treatment plant, they have iconic markers. That's what I call them. How I'm in marketing, obviously, that show like the highest levels of flooding that the wastewater treatment plant has ever experienced. So the highest plaque that you see there was actually the most recent floods of last year. And, the young people, it was cool for them because it's life-size and real for them to be standing there and thinking, wow, that's how heavy the floods got. And as part of that story, Ronnie said, to ensure we deliver your water and wastewater 24/7, we have people that stay overnight here to make sure the community has what they need. So that message really sinks in, right, when they see that kind of thing behind the scenes. Week 3 was with Mary, and they did water governance and sustainability. There's a game called Wateropolis where they get to make policy decisions. So they all were you. We told them, you're the board today, and you have a certain budget, and you have to decide how you're going to spend it, what you're going to cut, what programs you're going to offer, what are your top priorities. So here, we split them up into groups. Their priorities were quality, financial stability, community. I can't read what sustainability. Yeah. And then at the end, when they made their decisions, we said, do your decisions match your priorities? And in some cases they did, and in some cases they didn't. They forgot about their priorities. That's okay, don't we all? Week 4 this was the new session we added. And this was distribution and collections and CIP, which Vishnu and Sean offered and mentored the kids with. And they loved seeing all the equipment. Terry Mossau was also part of delivering this. He brought out one of the big machines and they got to sit in it. They loved hearing that day. There were, I think, 2 or 3, smaller pipe breaks in the community. So it was kind of, and Sean had to leave in the middle of the session for one of them. So for them, it was cool to be behind the scenes while the action is happening. And what was really neat was each week we could see them layering on the information that they learned. So this session, it was all about how much does that cost? How much did that machine cost? So it was neat to see them applying the knowledge that they'd learned. And finally, week 5 was with Simon Engineering, Sean, and then a couple other guys. Vishnu came to also help mentor, and Jesse, also from DNC, helped to mentor the kids. And basically, we split them up into 3 teams, gave them a schematic, and said, okay, build the system. You've got pipes, buckets, etc. And some pumps, make the water flow over the mountain, which was like a ladder. And Jesse and Sean and Simon and Vishnu were consultants that they could call upon from time to time. So this is them building it. And it was so cool, the energy in the room to see when there were 3 teams and this team number 2 built it first. And there were cheers in the room, like they were screaming and yelling. And by that time, a couple of parents had arrived and they were there to see it happening. I mean, for us who do this every day, it was so cool to see through their eyes the wow factor in making it happen. Yeah. And we ended, before I talk about ending it, as part of the final session, we asked them a few questions, and we also sent out a follow-up survey. We said, what kinds of things will you take away? So definitely, again and again, they said, we never understood how much effort went into getting water to us. So that really sunk in, you know, and also all the different moving parts, biology, science, operations. One of the kids said, this was great, I want the program to be longer because I had a lot of questions answered, but I have even more questions now. Great. And, you know, one of the survey responses was, you know, I'm going to tell my friends about this. I've already been bringing up the stuff that I learned every day. We also asked them, what surprised you the most? So again, how much work goes into getting water to us? One participant said, surprising how the biosolids felt so soft and doughy. And then there was some, you know, banter. Well, we should raise the rates. No, don't raise the rates. And like I said, a lot of how much does that cost? I love this one. When they were building the water system, you know, one team, they weren't quite, let's just say it was clear they weren't going to build that water system first. So one kid was like, why don't we just drill another hole in this bucket? You know, it was like, and Simon had a heart attack, but so it's safe to say it was really educational. They learned a lot. And this is really having its ripple effects. One example is Tiffany called me last week, or not called me, she emailed me and said, oh, we're having a group coming tomorrow. Just thought you'd want to know because one of the kids took part in a tour, and tomorrow they're bringing their parents and some family friends. And this group showed up with 20 people, sort of like the neighbors of the neighbors and their parents and friends. So, you know, our goal was if we share with the kids what we do, they'll tell their friends and family. So it is really working. And then this is the graduation ceremony. We gave everyone a graduation certificate, and I was the MC, and Sean and Simon were at the front handing out certificates and shaking people's hands. And this is such a, we've already talked to the school board. We know they want to run it again with us. Such a great program. I hope it will just continue to be one of the highlights of our community engagement initiatives. Do you have any questions?
Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, thank you very
such a
much,
pleasure.
Linda. I like the analogy with planting seeds, and I think that it'd be pretty cool that sometime in the future we'll see the results of those
Yeah,
seeds growing and
absolutely.
nourishing, and it certainly had the wow factor with me.
Yeah, great.
Thank you very much, and
Thank
thanks
you.
to all of those people that participated and supported this, and I'm happy to hear that it was fun for them too.
Yeah,
Yeah, very educational.
thank
Linda.
you. I'm supposed to advance to the next slide. There we go.
And as Linda sits down, we at our staff meeting this morning acknowledged and thanked Linda for her service. She's brought a lot to our team, and we're really motivated to maintain her enthusiasm and commitment to this work. So as Linda said, we're glad to have Blake on, and Mary Tiger, and of course the full team will do our best to keep the program moving. But Linda, thank you so much.
We'll miss you, Linda.
And speaking of Mary Tiger,
Mary Tiger's up next.
Hi, good evening. Mary Tiger, Sustainability Manager. So November was a big month for outreach and communication. We celebrated Care to Share Day on November 21st. And it's a little early to point to any impact in terms of contributors and contributions. We haven't run through all the billing cycles since Care to Share Day, but we do have a lot of good successes to point to from Care to Share Day. In the lead up to Care to Share Day, we had Care to Share Pie Day, which staff and IFC staff participated in, and we raised over $550 for Care to Share at that event. So that was a really great way to celebrate Care to Share and the impact it's had in the community since the late 1990s. The town of Carborough, the town of Chapel Hill, and Orange County all proclaimed November 21st as Care to Share Day, which got a lot of attention to the program. In the week and a half leading up to Care to Share Day, WCHL donated 23 public service announcements promoting Care to Share Day, and those PSAs were narrated by our Youth Water Academy ambassadors. So a great kind of way to dovetail those outreach efforts. For many wonderful reasons, November 21st was our biggest day on Twitter. We put out a lot of messaging. It was repeated by many of our partners in the community, and a few folks even wrote their own original tweets and sent those out to their networks, which were way bigger than OWASA's network. So even though we don't have the numbers yet of what it did to contributions, back to Ray's point about planting seeds, we certainly hope it planted a lot of seeds and demonstrated the power of the network that we're developing and have in the community. And we're able to really get a lot of attention to this really important program for a modest amount of money. So we hope that you felt empowered to share information about Care to Share Day with your networks, and as we look to 2020 and how we're continue to amplify Care to Share and repeat Care to Share Day as it is custom at OWASA, we will think of ways to make it better, and we welcome your feedback on doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. That was a wonderful program that you put on, and I know you had a lot of help with that too, and thanks to everybody that contributed.
There was a lot of help from the team, and many thanks to Linda Lowe for building a really wonderful campaign toolkit and orchestrating it.
Thank you very much. Additional comments, suggestions, and information items by board members. I know Jody Eimers has one.
Yes, on December 4th, the Orange County Commission for the Environment rolled out its 2019 State of the Environment Report. It's only available online, although Andy very kindly printed a paper copy for me. It's not that long. There are lots of links in it, though, so if you want to drill down into some of the topics, you're certainly welcome to. The three categories are land resources, air and energy, and water. And I think a number of board members will be really interested in looking at this report, if not reading parts of it or all of it. And Ed tells me that Mary Tiger will be sending the link out to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. John Morris.
Thank you. We've had this very successful diversity and inclusion effort with our consultants that have worked very well with all the staff. And, we've met with them to hear them report on their work with the different staff groups. It seemed that I remember that we had considered having a session with them to help us as a board think about ways to work better together. And do I remember correctly on that? That was on the table at one point.
Sorry, John.
I think that at one point we talked about having.
I'm sorry. That's I'm gonna announce that later on. I've got to find it on the agenda. It's we're gonna try to meet the week of February the 10th.
Okay, I had missed that. Okay, good.
It's on my notes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we're gonna announce it tonight. We just yes, with all the other things that are all the other meetings but this is important, so we're going to do that soon after the first of the year. And it looks like February 10th would be a good week, and I'd like to have some feedback later on. We'll touch base with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is good timing. I believe that we're off to a good start in looking for a replacement for Ed. It's going to be a huge change for the organization. And so we might as well get ourselves tuned up as best we can to do our part for a good transition. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other board members? Bob Morgan?
Yeah, I'd just like to go back to the academy for a little bit and share with the board and the staff that I was one of those seeds one time. I was city engineer of Hampton, Virginia for one day when I was about 15. And it, I think, led to me to have a career in public service, and I'm very, very thankful for that. But those type of things are very important. So thank you very much to the staff.
Thank you, Bob. Anybody else? Well, I have one I'd like to share. I had the pleasure of attending the holiday luncheon, the OWASA holiday luncheon yesterday, and it was a lot of fun, and had some good food. I got credit for buying the meal that actually you guys bought, but I took credit for it gladly. But it was a barbecue brisket with all the trimmings. It was very, very good. And a lot of people contributed to that. I know Stephanie Glasgow's staff, Kelly Belcher, was one of the leaders in putting all that together. And I want to just express my appreciation to those people that contributed. but also the one of the diversity and inclusion groups. And in order to have a little bit more of a mix, and I've never done this before, but as you walked in, you got a little bag of candy with a number on it, and that number indicated which table you were assigned to sit and eat. And so you were sitting with a group that included people that I had never met before, and we had a lively conversation and learned a little bit about each other. And then we played this silly game. It was quite fun. It was if you ever played Mad Libs, it was a variation of that, and everybody had a lot of fun doing it. I guess I just want to encourage. We spend a relatively short period of time on the board, some shorter than others, I guess, but mostly it's about 6 years, and that 6 years goes pretty quick. I'm in my third, and John Morris and I came on the same time, and it's almost halfway done if we're appointed again, which hopefully we will be. But and one of the pleasures of doing this service is meeting the employees. The employees are very special people, and these employee functions that we're invited to are really a lot of fun, and you walk away feeling better about what you're doing, what you're contributing to the organization. So I'd really encourage board members to take advantage of those in the future. Any other comments, suggestions? Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. 6 items on the consent agenda. Item number 1, resolution honoring the service of Sandra Bradshaw, the Orange Water and Sewer Authority and the Carborough Chapel Hill Orange County community. Item number 2 is a resolution honoring the service of Steve Graves to the Orange Water and Sewer Authority and the Carborough Chapel Hill Orange County community. Item number 3 is minutes of the October 10th, 2019 meeting of the Board of Directors. Item number 4 is minutes of the October 16th, 2019 special meeting of the Board of Directors. Excuse me. Item number 5, minutes of the October 24th, 2019 meeting of the Board of Directors. And item number 6, minutes of the November 14th, minutes of the November 14th, 2019 closed session of the Board of Directors for the purpose of discussing a personnel matter. Are there any public comments on the consent agenda? Are there any questions, comments, or is there an item a board member would like to pull from the consent agenda? Well, may I have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Rashir Vora,
Second.
second by Yinka Ayankoya. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to the regular agenda. First is item number 7 on the agenda is the Ruth Rouse is going to do a PowerPoint on the long-range water supply plan evaluation of water supply risk. Ruth.
All right, good evening. I want to introduce those of you who hadn't met Reed Palmer. Reed is here with us tonight, and he's a project manager from Hazen and Sawyer. He's also very much a modeling guru, so I know enough to be dangerous. So if you have in-depth questions, he's here to rescue me, and feel free to kick me or whatever if I say something that's wrong. So the good news we have is that really we're at very low risk for running out of water in the near term. And that near term is actually a fairly long period of time through after the quarry is expanded. We're going to see that through some of those modeling results this evening. And there's no decisions that you all need to make tonight, but any feedback you have on the risk modeling. And then when we come back and evaluate certain alternatives through it in the future, that any feedback or guidance you provide will pull into that as well. Just as a reminder, when I say local water supplies, I'm talking about Cane Creek Reservoir, University Lake, and our off-stream storage in the Quarry Reservoir. So the modeling this evening does not include our allocation of water from Jordan Lake. Our model is a mass balance model. It's very commonly used in water supply type models. The overall concept is pretty simple. However, when you get in the details, that's where the complexity can begin. But I think what you all need to understand is just what's shown in here is that We think of our reservoirs as kind of bathtubs or tanks. We've got water coming into them through tributary flows that are coming in, through groundwater flows that are coming in, and then we also have precipitation falling onto our reservoirs. And just like we have the rain falling on, we've got evaporation that's pulling some of that water up into the atmosphere. We also have water supply withdrawals that we're making to serve the people of Chapel Hill and Carborough. And then there's water that may be going over the dam. And in the case of King Creek Reservoir, we can also release water through the gates on that dam. So it's just kind of water in minus water out. And we do that on a daily basis. So Ed was making fun of me earlier this week. He said, you always get up in front of the board and tell them what you're about to tell them is wrong. And so, yes, I'm going to tell you that once again, what I'm about to tell you is wrong. There's some uncertainties that we laid out in your board package, and then there's also key assumptions that went into our model. Again, it's just those 3 local reservoirs. We don't include Jordan Lake. The yield on those 3 reservoirs assumes that we're leaving 20% storage. Now, we don't want to get below 20%. So that's our target that we've set as an organization, is to never fall below 20% storage. The model is based on historic data from 1926 to 2011. So when we look at it in the future, we're assuming then that we're going to have similar weather patterns to those 86 years. The model also assumes in our water shortage response plan, we have water shortage state triggers that we have to declare a water shortage stage at. And the model assumes that we're not going to declare that water shortage stage earlier than what's laid out on that. It actually happens when it happens. And just so you are all clear, in the water shortage response plan, we are legally, statutorily obligated to declare those water shortages when we meet those points, and Ed has the authority to declare those. If we declare them earlier, we would bring that to the board for your input and for you to decide whether we wanted to declare it earlier. The model also assumes the water treatment plant operators have tables that indicate when storage is at this level in each of our reservoirs, then they're going to pull water in these certain ratios from them. So the model follows that assumption along. In reality, that can't always happen. So for example, we've got a CIP project going on right now on the University Lake pump station, so we cannot withdraw water from University Lake at this point. If there's water quality issues in one of the reservoirs that makes it higher, we have to use more chemicals to treat it. They're worried about filter clogging from certain types of algae. Water quality may also trump that decision. And then again, we're basing a lot of this on our raw water demand projections and the information that we gave to read the model. So how did we pick the scenarios that we wanted Hazen to model? So if you look, just a reminder that that blue line is our yield. And I guess you're all looking at it on the TV, so I really don't need to be. So the blue line is our yield, and you can see that in about 2025, it drops down to 10.2. And then you see a blip up. In actuality, it'll fill slowly here and goes up to about 12.6 MGD. Where that line is closest to our demand line, so our baseline demand is the black, and the 99th percentile is that gray line. Where they're closest, so that kind of happens in the near term, right before that expanded quarry fills. And then in the long term, of course, it happens out at 2070. And you can see too that after the quarry fills, that distance between the yield and our demands gets bigger, so our risk will actually go down after the expanded quarry comes online. So this table just summarizes the 4 scenarios that Hazen and Sawyer ran that was included in your agenda packet. So when we assumed at 2034, before the expanded quarry is online, we wanted to look at baseline, and that as well at 70, the baseline. In 2034, we took the reclaimed water system offline. That was actually more conservative. Our demands were actually higher there than the 99th percentile. So we said, what if in 2034 something happened to our reclaimed water system? And then in 2070, we use the 99th percentile as the second scenario for the 2070. So these are the results, and I'm showing them in a different way than you were presented in your agenda packet. So this is the number of years out of those 87 or 86 modeled years. The yellow bars represent advisories that happen under each of those 4 scenarios. And just to remind you that in an advisory, there are no mandatory restrictions on our customers. So we're just asking them to voluntarily conserve water. So there's no major impacts on our customers, no monetary impacts on our customers. When we reach stage 1, we start reducing the number of things that they can do with water, and it also starts having an economic impact on our customers. We do implement drought surcharges, and they progressively get more or higher as you move through the stages. So there is an economic impact on folks as you move through those. And I also want to point out that we can't think of this as an increasing trend. I probably should have reversed the axis here, but that's that black little zigzag line is to make sure you're understanding that these are not at scale. There's actually 2 2034 scenarios and 2 2070 scenarios. And again, I did have Reed look at what would happen after the expanded quarry came online. So looking at 2035 demands and then 2035 also without reclaimed water. And in those runs, we'd never hit an advisory. So that expanded quarry really does reduce our risk. And in none of these scenarios do we hit where we got below 20% storage. So we did meet that goal. And the stage 3, I do want to point out that even though it doesn't happen a whole lot, it was 1 year in that baseline 2070 and 3 years out of the 86 in 2070. It can last for a little while. I think it was 19 consecutive weeks in that 2070 with the 99th percentile. And I haven't been here during a drought, and I'm hoping that continues. But I do know from speaking to people who were here in 2001 and who were here in 2007 that when you're in it, this model doesn't help you determine what's your course of action, and it can be kind of a scary time. So I know Ed was here, he can speak to that, but I don't think we want to get into those stage 2s and stage 3s too frequently. So key takeaways, again, our near-term risk is low. So I want to point out to you all that when we meet again at the end of January, we talk through alternatives. Ask your questions. If you need more information, there's nothing driving the schedule on this. They're important decisions that you'll have to make, and you can take your time and make sure you have the information to make good decisions. Our risk will increase slowly over time after the expanded quarry reservoir is online. Again, these risk projections don't use Jordan Lake, even in drought, and we probably would be calling on our neighbors to send us some water. So really, we need to evaluate kind of what the service risks are, the risks of our raw water supply. The implications of running out of water are huge on that, but against other things that we're doing, and what strategies and investments do we need to make, and look at those on a holistic manner. And with that, that was it on my presentation. And if you have questions and comments, and again, use Reed while he's here.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Are there any comments from the public? Are there any comments, questions from the board? John Morris?
That's really a very thorough presentation, very helpful to get us prepared for our January meeting. And so the Jordan Lake, use of Jordan Lake has been fenced off from this modeling because it's not really an option that's very usable to us right at this point. So I remember that we've discussed this with Ed, defining the way in which we could use Jordan Lake as one of the alternatives we'll be discussing at the end of January is fairly complicated in that in working with Cary and Durham, we're going to want to balance our need to get some amount of water reliably versus the cost of having that assurance. And so, Ed, I think you said you were going to pursue that to some extent. And is that still underway to check out some, some discussions with Cary and Durham to make sure that we have it'd be possible to define an alternative that would be not the best alternative.
Yes, that is one of the alternatives that the board will see in January, your special meeting on the 30th of January. Very recently, in conversations with Jamie Revels, who's the utility director in Cary, the town of Cary said they're not interested in entering a guaranteed arrangement with OWASA for supply. And the reason for that, their thinking on that is they want to make sure that they have the flexibility to be a good regional partner to any utility that may be in need in a situation and not be burdened by a commitment to one utility and have another neighboring utility be in much worse shape than OWASA say. So it had been our thinking that, one of the viable options would be some guaranteed arrangement, make an investment and have a guarantee rather than the mutual aid we rely on now. But like I said, just very recently, a week or so ago, in conversations with Jamie, he indicated the town of Cary at this time is not interested in a guaranteed arrangement. But he repeated over and over again, we'll bend over backwards to help you. We've been good neighbors, we've been good partners, trust us, we'll work together in the region, we'll make sure we are doing our best to help each and every utility that might be in need. Because, certainly there's no such thing as a drought-proof reservoir, but Jordan Lake is a very robust supply for the region. And, I know Jamie said we could count on their help, but again, he wanted to stop short of a guaranteed commitment. He wanted the flexibility for the town of Cary to help based on the given circumstances at the time.
Well, Ed, thank you. That's very good information for us to have. And, that still leaves arrangements that we might evaluate in which we could buy some water from, we could get some of our Jordan Lake water through Cary and Durham, maybe in the very early stages of a drought.
Exactly.
And do things that would prevent us from drawing down our sources in a way that would not compete with other people in an emergency. So that the cost and benefits of that would have to be evaluated, but what you've just told us is very valuable knowledge. Thank
Yes,
you.
and what you just described is very much in play and would be part of the strategies that we would consider with your guidance. Absolutely.
Ruth, would you put up the bar graph again, please, on the slide? That's the first time I think I've seen that. I don't,
Yeah, that's different. That's a different way of looking
That's-
at it than what was in your
and,
packet.
and that's more eye-popping than the graphs. Or
Yeah.
looking at the tables of numbers or
Yeah, it's
what that's
brainstorming.
saying.
Like, Reed suggested this. I'm gonna give him the credit
Oh.
for coming up with the number of years. And I said, yeah, I think that's actually more,
So
it
what's
makes
that?
more sense to board members, or I think it helps you in decision-making and like how often.
So having been through a few droughts myself, and being on the customer side of the thing, when we got to these advisories in stage 1 and stage 2s and stage 3s, it was pretty scary. And so that to me is maybe the stage 3 color is awful. Maybe it should be more bold or something. I don't know. But you don't really want to go there. So the OWASA boards of the future need to do something to mitigate, and maybe we can have that conversation in January 30th, that what we need to do now to mitigate the possibility of those things happening in 2034. But we need additional supply by 2070 is what that's
Right.
telling me.
Yep.
Bruce Bowen?
Thanks for this. Ruth, I have 5 questions. Thanks, Ruth. I have 4 or 5 questions or so. Please bear with me. Let me, just because I wrote some notes for myself here. Okay. Let's start with, there's a comment here about the Haw River as a supply for us in an emergency situation. And that's the first time I heard that we have could have access to that water. But I suppose my question is, if we're low enough to want to exercise that, what's the likelihood that the hall will have enough flow to help us out at that point? Do we have any idea of
I
that?
know that they went out and surveyed it during the 2007, 2008 drought, and that's how we selected the landowner that we have the agreement with. It is kind of a deeper pooled area there, and I know at least in 2007, 2008, there was adequate depth there that we could access it. Now, I think we all would rather go to Jordan Lake and get water from our neighbors than set that temporary option up.
Okay.
Yeah, I can add, thank you, Ruth. That Hall River option is the worst case scenario, frankly. And as Ruth said, certainly if we could, we'd be using our Jordan Lake allocation through utility neighbors to augment our supply. But, you know, if all options were gone, what remains? And it's the Hall River. And we did do a good bit of work, including counting the number of driveways temporary pipes would have to cross to pump the water from the Hall River to the King Creek Reservoir. I met with the Division of Water Resource Director at the time and said you would have no authority to do that. But if people in Chapel Hill were running out of water and the hospital was going to close, somebody probably would say yes.
Okay.
To allow you to do that. And we also had arrangements in rentals with a private property owner where some of the temporary assets could be positioned. So it is a well thought out, but clearly worst case option. And I would echo what Ray said. I think it's this organization's job, this board's job, to make sure that would never have to be put in play as a worst case supply option that you know, either through our Jordan allocation or some of the other supply and demand alternatives that you'll see in your January 30th meeting would be in play. So
Ed, does that take in consideration, though, the city of Greensboro has a straw in Haw River, too?
yeah, we looked, and frankly, during a severe extended drought, majority of the stream flow in the Haw River is discharges from wastewater treatment plants upstream. That's why there's water in the Haw River in the worst of drought, because municipal wastewater treatment plants are discharging.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
So,
Highly treated, though. I'm going to point that out. We're sending ours to Cary, so.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. The 20% number, is that tied? And I also saw 100-day reserve. Are those two tied together? Is that where the 20% comes from?
some of that was our rough estimate of time it would take to deploy the worst case scenario. Yes, Mary?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. What?
So if we had to deploy the worst case scenario pump from the Haw River,
Okay.
we estimated how long it would take to put the infrastructure in place to do that.
Got it.
And, you know, it was 2 or 3 months. So is that about right? Like
I think
100?
it's like two months,
Yeah,
so we have a little
so-
cushion undercurrent.
So that was the rationale for why we picked 20 and not 15 or 30.
Okay. Fine. Then I don't understand why we have 20% as sort of the target of, no, that explains the 20%. What I don't understand is on the graph, hold on a second, so attachment 2, where we show when we enter stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, depending on our annual demand.
Right.
Why we would enter stage 1, I'm looking just at January as an example. We enter stage 1 at 35% if we're drawing 7 MGD. We enter it also at 35% if we're at 8 MGD and 35% if we're at 9 MGD. Wouldn't, when we enter one of those stages, that stage be driven more by how long it's going to take until we hit, say, the 20% number?
That is
or-
what it's based on. So stage one is a less than 2% chance, I believe, in meeting and hitting that 20% mark and over the next year.
Okay,
Whereas stage two, I think, is 10%.
10%, right.
I have to go back and look at the water shortage response plan, but
But then I don't understand why, if we're drawing at 7 MGD, we have the same percentage probability of hitting the 20% as if we're drawing at 9. It would seem to me that we're going to get, there's going to be a higher probability we're going to get to 20% if we're drawing at 9.
yeah, I think because you have a higher probability of it filling. Like if you look at the summer months, there's a difference between
Yeah,
those as you move
yeah, I'm
up.
I'm
And maybe
comparing,
Reed can explain that better. I don't know.
I'm
But-
comparing January
Yeah.
of all three of those cases, not the summertime. So if we're drawing at 9 MGD, sort of by definition, we're going to get to the 20% sooner.
Right, historically, I think in January, we're going to be, the reservoirs are going to be refilling faster. So if they're refilling faster, you're not going to hit that 20%.
But they don't refill faster if you're drawing at 9 versus if you're drawing at 7. They refill at the same rate.
But the historic rainfall patterns are filling it faster than what we're taking it out. That's the way to put it on those.
Okay, I don't understand that.
So when you say 2%, there's a 2% chance or 10% chance or something. That's 2% of these model years, and 2% of these model years, we will reach that
You
threshold?
reach 20% within 12 months.
Yeah, so that's the, and I didn't understand that, but it's 2% of that 86 model years, because you're modeling every year.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but if we're drawing at 9 MGD, we're going
Taking it
to,
out faster,
we're
right.
taking it out faster. We, by definition, have to have a higher probability of hitting the 20% than if we're drawing at 7 MGD. I mean, that,
So, this is Reed Palmer with Hazen and Sawyer. So we ran these in 5% bins. So the way these charts were created is we started every, January 1st at every storage threshold from 100 to even less than 20% in 5% increments. And all you're seeing here is that there was no statistical difference at 5% intervals between 7 MGD and 9. The probability was, yes, you're right, the chance would increase if you were at 9 MGD
yeah,
over 7 MGD, but it didn't show up. It didn't show up in the results because we didn't run it at 37% full starting on January 1st and 33% full, and
okay.
so it's just the way it's binned in 5% storage increments, and the marginal 2 MGD, which then when you multiply it by the seasonality factor in January is even less than 2 MGD difference, because
Well,
it didn't create an increase in that.
okay,
It didn't throw you over the threshold and say, oh, we better call it at 40%.
okay. It's not intuitive to me why at 7, 8, and 9, you're at 35%, but then when you increase it just another 1 MGD to get to 10, then you're at 40%.
Yeah, it was enough to do it, so that when you set
Okay.
it up at 40% and you were at 10 MGD, there was more than a 2% chance
Okay,
of dropping below 20% in the next 12
Okay.
months. So then it said, okay, then we better set the stage 1 threshold 5% higher.
okay, fine. I'll certainly take your word for it on that. The next thing was on, so this is figure 1. When we're filling the quarry, I think we're being too conservative where we have that vertical line at 2035. And if we're going to be at 10.2 in 2034, we've been flat for 10 years. There's no way then that we're going to be at 12
Oh,
and a
I
half.
agree.
So
I agree.
why are
It's-
why
it
are we
would be,
punishing
it
ourselves
would-
so much?
It would be somewhere between 2030 and
Yeah.
2035 it's going to fill.
Right. And
I could
Uh,
show that probably with a diagonal line.
yes, and that would change, of course, I guess, the 2034 no RCW. We probably wouldn't have any purple or green there. I think we're hurting ourselves more than we really need to. We're being too conservative. Okay, it's something to think about. And then I guess the last one is, this is more of a policy thing. I'm a believer that when we enter, stage 1, 2, and 3, we should really ramp up the rates. I mean, dramatically. And we go up at most, I think, 4 times. When would be an appropriate time for us as a board to talk about the idea of changing the slope of that curve? I mean, certainly here tonight isn't the right time, because that delivers a very strong message to the users, and it's a relatively immediate thing we can do to conserve also, a short-term play. Is there a normal time during the year when we would discuss that sort of thing?
Well, of course, that's part of the rate that
Yeah.
the board considers through the budget process and adopts every June.
Okay.
So, one option is to consider it in this upcoming budget cycle. Certainly, as you look at options on January 30th and then through the late winter and spring as part of the update of the water supply plan, I think you'll have a better feel for, supply and demand options and risk and what path you might be on. And a lot of it's very much a policy level decision because, if we can cost effectively and reliably access our Jordan allocation through neighbors and purchase water and never have to be in restrictions at all, other than maybe an advisory, that's an option. Or if the approach is, no, we want, even though the region may have supply, we want to really buckle down and save and conserve. And so we want to send even a stronger price signal to customers to conserve and to cut back. So, there's a number of ways, the community and the OWASA board could approach that, which are 180 degrees really apart in thinking.
Yeah.
So that would be the staff's view is it's a policy decision, and we think you should have the flexibility, depending on the circumstances at the time, to purchase water whenever you think it's a good idea to purchase water.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm certainly a believer that we should exercise the mutual aid society as much as we need to, and likewise others should lean on us. But if we do get to the point of having sufficiently low supply and maybe we can't purchase, then we need to send a very strong signal to our customers.
Yeah, and having been through 2 bad droughts with Ray and a lot of the community and team here, when those restrictions were put in place, it hurt some customers, commercial customers are out of business. They can't pressure wash anymore. Car wash is shut down, landscapers, people can lose their lawns because they're not irrigating and shrubbery. And so, I mean, there is a definite pain level with the different levels of restrictions. And then for people that are on fixed budgets or we tried to set those surcharges that we would always have a lifeline rate that isn't associated with a surcharge. But, some homes have large families, use a lot of water and are in higher blocks. And then if you start surcharging them, there's real affordability issues. So these are all really important policy issues for the board to wrestle with, for sure. But to answer your question, I mean, the board could take that on at any time. My advice and guidance would be, let's get further through the long-range water supply plan, have a better sense of what this range of options are available to the board, to the community, and then go from there.
Yep. Okay, fair enough. Good. Thank you.
Regarding the January 30th meeting, will you model
We won't have modeling results there. The modeling will be done afterwards on.
Okay, we're
kind
going to
of-
discuss what we want to model.
We'll pare down the alternatives
that's
before
what
we
we're
do
gonna- okay.
additional modeling.
All right, thank you. Jody Amers?
Like Bruce, I have a few questions, and they're not really in any order other than I came across them as I was reading
Okay.
this. So really, most of my questions are on the first few pages, and they might all be relevant to the uncertainty of the risk modeling.
Okay.
So is this a new reservoir optimization model? Was it just prepared for this?
We've had it for since
Okay.
like 2003 years, probably. I know I've seen files back to like 2000,
Okay,
early 2000s, yeah.
okay. And was this a Hazen and Sawyer
Yes.
produced thing?
Mhm.
And are there updates that are ongoing using new information, the
Yeah.
additional historical information?
Yes, right now you see it's only out of the 86 model years. When we do it later, I mean, because they kind of threw this in front of where we were originally going to be doing the modeling.
Mhm.
So for them to be, they just took the model as it was currently set up through the 2011. They will update it through 2018, 19, whatever. When we do
Okay.
the additional. So that will be updated.
Okay,
I would anticipate that would actually make kind of some of these curves come down a little bit because we've been in relatively wet seasons, 2011. And then for further information too, we've used this model. Hazen worked with Perry, Durham, OWASA, and Raleigh. So that's actually been updated into a different platform to pull all those towns together in
Excellent.
and looking at how you could optimize between those four utilities.
excellent. Great, glad to hear that. I have to object to some terminology here, and
Okay.
that is that the information
Okay,
we have,
USGS person, she's
Right.
speaking up here.
the information, quote, the information we have is full of uncertainty. At best, I think you should say highly uncertain,
Okay.
or just uncertain. Full of uncertainty, particularly for the non-expert, may seem like you really don't know what you're doing. And that's not true. It is science-based. And you have some idea of the range of uncertainty and perhaps even the probability distribution of the uncertainty in some of your input variables. So I'd hate to mislead the
Yeah,
public.
thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. And likewise, on the top of page 7.2, there's a phrase here, you try to make an educated guess. I would just say estimate, because again, it's science-based and
I'm not even seeing that.
Oh,
Oh, I
the
see.
very
Right
top
at the very
line.
top line.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I know it's difficult, and I know it's, there's a lot of consequences and to making these decisions, but I would hate to impart to the customers of OWASA that we're just, pulling numbers out of the air, because we're not. Let's see. And then in that same list of bullets here, you mentioned some of the uncertainty in stream flow records and future hydrologic conditions. And in fact, we do know that that hydrologic processes are non-stationary. So the past is not necessarily what the future is going to look like. It may be the same probability distribution, but the parameters of the probability distribution, we expect them to change in time. And I'm wondering, does the state climatologist support water utilities and communities in projecting how long a drought might last? And
I know they're working right now on some of their outreach through the kind of putting, what is the that weekly report that comes out through the drought monitor. Thank you.
Yeah.
And looking at kind of revamping some of that and the information that comes out on that and make it a little bit more user friendly to people. They have also worked with utilities and doing some, if you go on their website, there are some, mainly I think for Falls of Jordan Lake, look at kind of hydrologic patterns. So there are some tools that they're starting to develop.
Yeah,
They're
great.
getting input from various folks.
Right. That's good to know. I guess it's that second or third bullet here that the estimates for reservoir storage volumes, et cetera, may not be accurate. And I wonder, does OWASA need to undertake projects to improve some measurements of those quantities? For instance, for reservoir storage volume, does OWASA need to do a bathymetric survey to measure the capacity of the reservoir given sedimentation?
Yeah, I think that may be some of the recommendations that come out and things for the board to consider are those types of studies. I think through the long-range water supply plan, we might have kind of like when you had raised the updating the Cane Creek watershed model. These are other types of studies that might also feed in.
Okay.
Come out of the plan.
All right. Let's see. I think when you mention uncertainty and historical stream flow records, I think you can get a pretty good expression of the uncertainty in those records from the source, the folks who collected and analyzed that data. So I think I think that's USGS data. I think you could ask them to quantify the uncertainty in those records for you. They should know. They should be able to give you an estimate. And so one of the purposes of this agenda item, the last line in the purpose thing, was to discuss the uncertainty of our risk modeling. I know in a lot of models, it's sufficient to do a sensitivity analysis. So you can take the parameters that you know you're not sure about, and you can pick one or two or more values and run the model with those values in them. But when you have as many sources of uncertainty as you have in this, sometimes you want to do something like a Monte Carlo model where you just have the probability distribution of these uncertain parameters, and you just pick a gazillion sets of those data from the probability distribution, each of those uncertain parameters, and come up with a number. So you get sort of a cloud of results. And I don't know if we need to go to that effort. And I would like to hear what you and Hazen and Sawyer Reed think how you might approach estimating uncertainty. Are you just going to do a sensitivity analysis, or?
And we hadn't talked about that at all. I think kind of like we'll give you the results. I mean, I think our risks are relatively low, so the level of effort that I'd like to get through some of the alternatives analysis first. I can have a discussion with Reed post this meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really have any strong opinion about how you should do it. I was just curious if.
Yeah, there weren't any plans to do that. We did do it on the demand projection, but that wasn't the plan.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's necessary, to be honest with you. Let's see. I did want to ask one more question, and that is about the reclaimed water. I'm hoping that, if anything, rather than taking the reclaimed water system offline, that there's more use of reclaimed water. I think that would be a great focus if we could identify users and some sort of scale that's efficient to supply reclaimed water to new users or more to UNC.
And
or
we are
something.
looking at that as part of the alternatives analysis at expand reclaimed water system.
So did you just need some, I mean, I'm not sure why you said, well, let's take reclaimed water out.
I mean, there is, if it failed for whatever reason, pipe,
Oh,
we-
okay.
single pipe
There-
going through,
there's- For the reclaimed water system that serves UNC, there are a lot more single points of failure. Plus, we don't have any reclaimed water storage on the campus. So there's not a buffer. And so with single, so the piping system's not looped. There's not alternate leads. There's not emergency interconnects with other utilities. So there's lots of single points of failure. So some of it was based on the lack of redundant infrastructure, and some of it's also based on if there was some upset at the wastewater treatment plant in the biological process that might take a month to recover, or there was unanticipated change in regulations that prohibit its use for some period. So it's just adding a level of conservatism, yet another level of conservatism to the work, because running out is not an option.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that explanation. That's
Bruce Yearborn.
So I have something that I'm curious about that's kind of the opposite of conservatism, I think. I think that, and I think Jody touched upon this, but if we're looking at our models based on prior 86 years, and we know climate change can cause greater amount of water shortages and longer and more in-depth water shortages than we have in the last 86 years, are we setting our models too not conservative enough?
Maybe. Absolutely.
Yeah, if we have a new drought record, our yield will come down.
Because when
Because
you're
it's
in the
based on-
drought and you have the reality that, like was said, yeah, you can put all the charts and probability and risk up. I mean, it's mission one, and all the community's focus is in how to finesse your way through the drought. So, the optimization model, I would say we follow that about half the time to optimize the supply, because the other half of the time we're optimizing the drinking water quality, managing expenses, saving energy, and there's so many things in play, so many moving parts, and that's why having a very diverse supply portfolio with a lot of resiliency and redundancy, the Jordan allocation and arrangement with the neighbors certainly is huge. Opportunities for more demand reduction, opportunities for more reuse, indirect reuse, or even reuse to the drinking system. The technology exists to do that. So there's a wide range of options you'll be looking at in January. This will be one of the most important things that you'll be working on for the next year or so to set this path forward. Because if you're looking at new supplies, I mean, they can take decades to put in place, right? So you may need to make some decisions now to help the people that follow you that are going to have to meet the 2070 supply. So, agree?
I would just add, with respect to the climate uncertainty, that, of course, we don't know which way it's going to go. I think for this region, what I've seen in the last 5 years, where we've tried to look at it quantitatively and not just qualitatively, we know it's going to get warmer. Chances are it's going to get wetter too. What does the increase in temperature do? Does it cause more evaporation, evapotranspiration in such a way that we, have are at more risk, hydrologically speaking, from droughts or less? And what I've seen is it still shifts things slightly toward the higher side in most models, but that doesn't mean there aren't some realities out there in global circulation models that would put us at greater risk. But I would say the median shifts it a little bit toward the wetter side. They're getting better all the time. The ability to download this data and downscale it to our area is getting better. Right now for Durham, we're actually doing this, taking a bunch of models and picking the ones that are kind of maybe some at the edges and some in the middle. See what does it tell us? And I know that talked about doing things like that.
Yeah, and we had been working with a grad student, and the wonderful thing was that she was free, and the bad thing was that she was free, so I have no stick for her, and so she has no deadline. But where she is in it is pretty much, it mirrors kind of what Reed has said, is that, generally she doesn't see the yield of our reservoir changing, but then when she looks at it, every once in a while there's an anomaly in her model that shows, oh, something might happen that doesn't kind of stick with the other, and that's where she is trying to look into some of that with with those anomalous years, what's going on with them. So yeah, it's a big puzzle. The fun puzzle though.
Other questions? Jody?
Yeah, I think, from what I understand about the hydrologic effects of climate change, even if an area is trending to have increased amount of precipitation, the chance for extreme drought is still there. In fact, the hydrologic extremes are what is characterized in this climate change. And I'll point out this 2019 State of the Environment Report.
I have not yet read that.
Well, on page 15, it refers to the fourth National Climate Assessment, the Southeast page. And the only data-based change that's noted in hydrology in this region to date is that days with precipitation above 3 inches have increased. So there's more intense precipitation, but you don't see it in stream flow yet, which is kind of interesting. So.
Other questions for Ruth? All right, now you don't need a motion or anything.
I don't need anything.
You've got
from you all.
plenty of feedback.
All right, thank you
Looking
much.
forward to January 30th. Okay, thank you, Ruth.
These are just going to shut this.
Oh, okay.
That was the last.
Okay. We can go on. Okay, next on the agenda, item 8, minority and women-owned business enterprises contractor participation. Vishnu Gangadaran.
Thank you. Vishnu Gangadaran, I'm the engineering manager for the capital improvements program. So a couple things before I go through some of the highlights of what I found during this exercise. So first of all, I wanted to thank you because this turned out to be a really useful exercise. I think this was really helpful. We've been, going at this issue for a while. Back in the spring, we went through what we thought was fairly comprehensive outreach with no real apparent results or differences in the bidding. But this was really helpful. We got through this exercise. I got to talk to a number of different, mostly procurement professionals and folks who, their full-time job is looking at the MWBE contracting opportunities. And so there was, I gained an appreciation of kind of the depth of the issue, in addition to a lot of the ideas that came out of that. And then there was some, some of the feedback was reinforcing what we thought, some of the challenges that we thought we were facing, that was reflected back from some of the conversations that I had. But again, establishing those contacts, we got some of the folks very willing to share their ideas and partner with us moving forward. So it's really, this kind of outreach, this networking is, it paid dividends. I think it'll continue to pay dividends. We're still having those kind of conversations. So I'm excited about that. The other thing is that it's good timing for us. You haven't seen my staff before you in several months with a contract for award. We're kind of gone through a period the first half of this fiscal year. We've just been busy with construction, but over the next 5 to 6 months, we're going to have a number of bids that are going to be let. We'll have over $10 million worth of construction that we'll be putting out on the street. So it's kind of a good time to look at implementing some of these new measures into our practices. Some of the takeaways that are mentioned in the report. Now, first of all, I was expecting to have, a typical kind of benchmarking, and we would have a ability to compare more than, I try to explain in the memo some of the inconsistencies and the differences in the way that people report their MWBE participation rates, and it just was not lending itself to an easy kind of benchmarking chart. And there's a wide variety of not only the kind of the sophistication of the programs that are set up, but also the way that people track, or in some cases don't even track. A lot of it was kind of verbal feedback that I got from folks as far as their MWBE results. So I was not able to really put that into, it was just a different exercise than trying to benchmark, say, water main breaks or something like that. But I did try to extract some of the, some of the feedback that I got. Certainly, I had several people talk about how water and sewer construction in particular, because of its specialization, that is a difficult area for them as well in their overall procurement program. That's the folks over in Durham, that's the number that kind of pulls down their numbers, because there just aren't a lot of, first of all, there's not a lot of minority prime contractors for water and sewer construction. And so they're facing some of the same challenges that we have with that sort of specialization. As I mentioned, some of the larger municipalities have done what's called a disparity study, and it's the process to really examine the historical patterns to see if there's a statistical imbalance between the amount of MWBE contractors that are available to serve that market and what's been utilized historically in the past. And that's so Durham and Charlotte and Greensboro have done that for, they in some cases over several years. Winston is just completing one now. So those 4 municipalities had kind of the best data to go by. And in particular, Durham's program, they were able to break down their numbers to kind of extract the water and sewer construction, which was very helpful to me. And in particular, I noted in there, they actually have like close to 5% in their MBE category, the minority business enterprise category. So that's notable to us because we can, we're having conversations with them where, it's a matter of establishing business relationships and getting your name out in front of the subcontractors who may want to partner with the prime contractors. And Durham's in a position where they host networking events periodically and are interested in partnering with us, and we can get our projects in front of those same subcontractors. So that's a really exciting potential there for us to get our name out in a way that I can host an outreach event here, and I probably wouldn't have anybody attend. Several other means and methods listed in the report that we can implement right away with some of the bids that are upcoming. And a lot of it is just increasing the awareness of our program in the pre-bid meetings and really kind of going over. And we do this already, but it's kind of emphasizing that point. Some places, as I mentioned in the memo, really emphasizing what it takes to how you're going to score those good faith efforts. We do require that, but some documentation of, okay, this is how we're going to evaluate those good faith efforts, those points that contractors are required to obtain if they're not meeting the 10% goal. Those sorts of things can help ensure that folks are really going through those in good faith. So we're going to implement that, as well as some additional outreach. So as I mentioned, we did outreach in the spring. A couple of the places mentioned that they do, in some cases, weekly mailers out of their bid opportunities. Now, we don't have that sort of volume with our bids, but just the fact of continuing to push that information out and get that, get your name out in front of these subcontractors may, potentially pay some benefits by just the recurrence of it. Other than that, I mentioned the coordinators network. That's also a good kind of partnership opportunity. We're looking into participation in that organization, and like I said, continue to having conversations with folks in these positions who can, we can share ideas with. We're all kind of looking at the same set of problems, particularly over the last few years, where even just to get bids in general has been a difficult task. So we're all kind of looking at it from the same standpoint. So as I said in the memo, we're excited to implement these, and we're excited to maintain these contacts that we've developed through this exercise. So I'm kind of looking forward to putting these practices into play. And happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Board member questions and comments?
Just a quick question. I was under the impression that the firm that submits the proposal finds their own subcontractors. So,
correct.
yeah, so I'm not sure how our outreach to OWASA's outreach to subcontractors really plays here.
Right. It's all a matter of, so we know the prime contractors who are asking for sets of our plans to bid on. So we have a list of folks we know are going to bid as primes. We can send that information out to subcontractors that we identify. But you're right. I mean, it really hinges on that prime contractor subcontractor relationship. And there's only so much you can do to put people in front of the prime contractors.
For sure.
Yeah, that gets to, I mean, this actually just comes right up to something that I'm doing at our own house. We're doing renovation, and we're, interviewing general contractors, and the two that we've interviewed are basically like, well, we have a subcontractor for each discipline, and that's what we like to use. And we're familiar with them, and we haven't used anybody else. We know the quality of the work, and so, there might be a better either cost option or a better option for whatever other criteria you're looking for, but this is who we use. And to them, it's more of a cost to look for other contractors in a lot of ways, because they have to, there's a risk factor. There's also just, getting the background information on that subcontractor. And I could see a prime contractor, what's the incentive for them? Really, there is none. If their subcontractor is available and doesn't blow their budget, then they're going to end up using that subcontractor primarily. So I do like the idea of, I think you said something, and I think you mentioned something about if they don't meet their MBE percentage. Let me find exactly what you said. You said distribute the pre-bid sign-in sheet to identify potential NWBE subcontractors. I think it's a good idea, but I'm wondering if that does or could or should affect the bid selection. If they have a pre-bid sign-in sheet that, identifies 0 potential NWB subcontractors, or doesn't it only identifies, maybe 1 or whatever the low percentage might be. Is there something that could we use that as part of the calculation? Or can we consider requiring a minimum of 2 subcontractor bids for certain work? And one of them being, an NWBE subcontractor or something like that. Is there anything we can do in the pre-selection or selection process?
I'm not quite sure I understand. So as far as distributing the pre-bid sign-in sheet, so we'll hold a pre-bid and say 5 prime contractors attend. Usually, there's usually no subcontractors who attend the pre-bid. I can then take that list of 5 prime contractors and get that word out to the 2 subcontractors if we know there's roofing involved or electrical, and we've got some identified subcontractors who might want to get in touch with one of those 5 prime contractors. So there's only so much we can try to get get the subcontractors in front of the primes. We're not in a position to require them to use anybody. That's their contracting process.
So can we request that they, for example, get like a couple of bids for subcontract portion?
Well, that's part of the point system for the good faith efforts, and so we do require that they, that they're making that outreach. So as part of all of the formal bid reviews we do, we check to see that they've sent those, they've made those contacts, where if they're subcontracting paving or what have you. We see records of where they've reached out to minority paving contractors for bids.
Okay, so that's already been done.
Yep.
And they have to have a certain percentage in that or do they, what I'm wondering is there any, in their good faith effort, if they don't meet their, I guess I forget how this works. What is the good faith effort to solicit NWB subcontractors?
So there's a number of points that you can receive, and there's a threshold of 50 points. And it's you have to you reach out to minority subcontractors, and you show us that you've done that. You get a certain number of points. There are points in there for setting up like quick pay provisions in your contracts, looking for opportunities to, sometimes it's not clear whether it is a subcontracting opportunity for you if you have the ability to self-perform paving, right? So there are different things that you can receive points for, and we check the documentation that they've gone through those efforts to receive those points. But one of the recommendations was, well, let's document how we're going to do that. One, to clarify that, and 2, just to put it in front of folks so that they know that we're looking at that.
Okay. I think I'm a little confused, but I'll ask you later on. I'm not, I mean, off after the meeting, I'm confused about, I guess, how you come up with the potential NWB subcontractor list.
There are lists out there, and so we use what most of the agencies use is the state's certification program. So the state Department of Administration maintains a database of subcontractors who are certified by the state as a minority or women business enterprise in one of those categories. And this is not something unusual for the contractors who are bidding on our projects. They all do this for every, all of these large water and sewer projects. So they'll go to that database, they'll pull out a list of, electrical subcontractors who I might want to use on this project. They'll make their contacts. It's not a perfect list. I've gotten feedback that some of that contact information is not, you never hear back. So it's not a perfect system, but that's the main database.
Okay.
Bob Morgan?
The items you have under group 2, the bullets that you have, one of the suggestions I would have is that we partner with the other jurisdictions in the county to do this type of events. I think to be more successful with and easier to do that way. And I would also suggest both the City of Fayetteville and the Fayetteville Public Works Authority are both working on the same issue, and they may have some additional ideas.
Other questions? John Morris?
I was impressed to read your agenda item that there's just a lot of shortage of data out there, and the data is kept in very different formats. So it's, you had a tough job to kind of compare us to other utilities and see what was happening. So, we're a small utility in a big state, and there's only a limited amount of influence we can have. So I think our best approach is to partner with other people if we can find the best way to do that. And the partnership needs to go beyond just having a bidding system that is open to minority and women-owned businesses and encourages them. We need to find a way to help those businesses get started. There were some things mentioned in here about ideas about training and workshops, to help businesses become more competitive and get organized better. So I'm really wondering about this thing you mentioned in your last paragraph, the North Carolina MWBE Coordinators Network. Is that something you found out about right at the end of your search? Okay.
Yes.
So that sounds promising. I'd like to see an agenda item at an upcoming meeting, hopefully not too far away, when you would look into this and explain how this coordinators network would work, and also check with other people like the North Carolina School of Government, maybe civil rights organizations, who have worked in this field, and try to bring back to us the best way that we can partner with other utilities and other organizations to take a really broad approach. I think that'll be more effective than just anything that we can do by ourselves.
I think that the way I read this is you're planning to implement all the Group 1 practices, and you're planning to continue assessing the Group 2 practices. And then it seemed like to me that it'd be worthwhile. It's very, very important. It dovetails very well into our diversity and inclusion practices, which are part of our core business practices. And so I think it's real important that we hear back. And what I would suggest is that Ed put it on the board's 12-month calendar to hear an update on the entire thing in a year. And that gives you plenty of time to do all these things and report back to us, and also maybe, hopefully, it would give us time to see some positive results on that.
So you're saying waiting a year before we look at this again?
A year to update this whole thing and report back to the board. If you want to hear back sooner than that on a particular item, we could.
Well, I just noticed that this coordination network, which sounds very promising, wasn't included in either list 1 or 2 because they just found out about it at the last minute. So I'd really like to hear something soon about whether that's a promising avenue or not.
Okay.
And maybe check with those School of Government and other organizations that might be
Sure.
active in this.
Okay.
Just
Yeah, I mean, we are looking into membership, and they have quarterly meetings is what they do, and it really is, it's an information sharing sort of thing. It's not, but I think one thing this exercise gave me was an appreciation. I mean, there are a lot of folks working on this question. There are a lot of events, more events out there than I was aware of previously. So, yeah, there are a lot of opportunities. In particular, like I said, the folks in Durham, they have the ability to put on not just the meet and greets, but to host educational events and really do some things that we wouldn't have the capacity to do. So they were really open to that idea of partnership. So I'm just happy about that.
And Vishnu, you were planning a update in January as part of the CIP semi-annual report.
Right.
on
I mean,
this.
yep. Yeah,
So,
it's
perfect. We can do a short-term update as part of Vishnu's CIP update in January.
Okay.
And then we'll also put it on the 12-month calendar for a more in-depth, detailed review a year from now, or about that. Does that make sense?
or even at the August.
At the August?
Yeah, because I
CIP
report on it at the,
update?
yeah,
Okay.
that works.
Excellent.
So we could build that in essentially every 6 months then as part of the CIP?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds.
All right, good, good. Any other questions, comments? Bruce Bowen?
Just a quick one. Do you routinely talk to our subcontractors when work is being done and get to know them a little bit? Because it strikes me that, a bunch of the initiatives you're doing make sense, but we also should perhaps get the voice of the subcontractors, because they may be able to shed light on friction that they see in connecting with us that the contractors, the generals, don't share or may not even see.
It's a little bit of a tricky, we typically don't like to get into the middle of that,
Yeah.
that contracting situation, but in terms of bidding opportunities, I think, and we know some of the subcontractors, better than others, certainly.
Mhm.
And I think there's some, at least feedback that we can get that might assist with, looking at it from a subcontractor's perspective in terms of bidding opportunities.
Yeah. Maybe worth it. It also may be a huge amount of work to get a relatively small amount of information. I know you have a million things you're doing, but worth thinking about.
Ian Coyle?
So I had a few things. So yeah, thank you for getting this back to us. And just some of the highlights that you had said about what the results are showing with the primes. I kind of noticed that when I was doing my research on the contracts that we have awarded, that none of the primes were minority or women business owned. Well, none of them were minority owned.
Mhm.
But I did notice that the women owned, there was just one women owned prime that we normally deal with. The reason I state that is because I had asked how many different companies contracts are awarded to, how many different women owned and how many different minority owned companies. So when I was looking through the agendas of all the, I went back all the way through 2017. That's where I stopped. So I did 2017, 18, and 19. And within those, I only found one woman company that was prime and 0 minority companies that were prime. Within the subcontractors, I found in 2019, I found 4 different women subcontractors and 2 minority subcontractors, or 2 separate companies. These are the ones that were actually listed where they said this is the company. A few of the other ones weren't listed, so I'm not sure who those are. But in 2018, there was the one woman prime company and then the 4 minority subcontractors, but they weren't specified who they were. It was just more specified of there are 4 different contracts that were awarded that were minority subcontractors. And then in 2017, same thing, was 1 woman prime company and then 2 subcontractors, but they weren't specified by name. One thing I would like us to do is try to find the capability to keep track of the number of different companies and if there's a resource available. And it took me a while to go through this, and I'm not sure if, without going through each of the agendas, I'm assuming that we have some capability to see these are the contracts that we have awarded and who the subs are on these, since none of the prime are minority owned, and we just know that there's 1 women-owned prime. But I'd like to at least keep track of how many different companies that we're utilizing. That way, if a project does come up in the future, we can kind of reference back to see, this is what this company is capable of doing. This is what they've done for us in the past. And if we have future contracts, we'll be able to reach out to them directly with whatever database that we do have.
That's actually something that in the spring of 2019, we started tracking subcontractors. And it's not just the subcontractors who are listed on the award items that you see when it comes to you. Even the folks who bid with other primes who are not the low bidder, we want to know who those are too, because it helps us. So we are starting to track that.
Okay, that's good to know. The other thing, I just kind of wanted to highlight what our numbers actually are when I'm looking at 8.1. Within our actual minority contracts that we have from the fiscal year 2015 to 2019, it's actually 2.9%. So I did all the minority ones. And then the female one was at the 25.9%. I'm not sure if that's prime and sub
Yes.
with the women. Okay.
Yep.
So I did kind of notice that we're kind of, with our female-owned companies, that we're doing better than some of the other municipalities in our area. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it is what it is. But I know what is with our minority-owned, and hopefully with kind of networking with Durham, we can kind of pull our numbers up. And just based off of the information that you provided to us, Durham was the highest ones. It looks like everyone else is maybe below us. That, at least from the information provided, Greensboro was lower than us. And I was kind of surprised that Greensboro was a little bit lower than us just because of the demographics of where it is.
So, so the Durham number that I provided was specifically for water and sewer. So not all places had that exact comparison, and that's really the relevant market that I'm looking for is what are your numbers? What are the contracting opportunities that you have for the water and sewer construction? I didn't have that for Greensboro. I think there was something else.
I thought I saw Greensboro at 1.1%. Let me see what that number is.
And I think that I'll have to check. I think that was all
8.3?
that was all construction.
Okay.
I don't think I had a water and sewer number for Greensboro.
8.3? The third bulletin?
Mm-hmm.
That's just, no, it says, for example, Greensboro has.
Right, and it's not specified there, but that was all construction. That wasn't
Okay.
That wasn't limited
So
to water
total,
and sewer.
not just water and sewer.
Right.
Okay. I did have some questions within the implementations. So for example, like the group one practices that'll be implemented, I'm pleased that we'll be updating our contractor list. Is that the same list that we'll be getting from the state certification website, or this is like an internal list that we update on our own?
And I'm sorry, you're looking at which bullet?
8.3 at the.
Okay, update. current
No,
list.
8.4, where it says update current list of MWBE contractors, including the ones from sewer, water and sewer projects from the city of Durham.
Yeah, so really what I'm seeing is that folks are moving more towards that centralized database. Durham used to keep their own MWBE list. They used to go, do their own certification, and they went away from that a few years ago. And so really what I want to do is, because we can pull that list from the state at any time, but I want to know who's bidding in Durham. So I really want to kind of track that information along with the folks who are bidding our projects.
I did have a question regarding, I think it's on the same one with the networking. I know we've been hearing about networking for the past couple of years, and I wasn't sure if we've actually done networking or it's we're going to be doing it with a partnership with another.
So it's a continuous thing. I did go to a networking event that was I can't remember who hosted it over in Raleigh, and try to get our name out there. It wasn't necessarily the right contractor or subcontractor pool. I was trying to talk about all these water and sewer projects, and it was just different sorts of construction. And there was an event that we were going to participate in at UNC, which was not specific to MWBE, but it was a contractor subcontractor outreach that ended up getting canceled. But really, I think that this round of outreach, I was actually talking to different folks, because when I reached out back in the spring, it was Chapel Hill, Carrboro, Orange County, UNC, and it's I think the folks I was talking to here are more in line with they're talking to the contractors and subcontractors that we need to be talking to. So I think we're looking forward to continuing those connections and doing that sort of network.
And then I did have some questions with regards to the group 2, the practices for further assessment and development. I just needed to know, like, basically what's required, or what's the time frame to begin or complete these additional practices, if there's something that you need from the board, or is it just research and then come back to the board?
Yeah, so a lot of the ones in the group 2 are kind of longer. They're longer term implementations and potentially longer term kind of development. It's going to take a long time before you see payback from these, and I'm not sure. I wasn't at a point where I could say, okay, we're going to assess this and come back with a recommendation. I will report during the semi-annual CIP reports about where we are on these. The last bullet in group 2, that really could have been a group 1 thing, because we are going to move forward with those sorts of things. But some of these other, some of the group 2 items, I wanted to get a little more feedback from other folks who have done this and get more into, how do they implement it. We're certainly not at scale to do some of these things, but are there components of it that fit within our scale? And I think some of the timeline of that is going to be, as we continue these conversations with other folks, I'll have a better idea of what the timeline is to make decisions on those. So, I don't have a date for the next, that the quarterly meeting that coordinators network will have, but certainly after that, I should have some hopefully some guidance on timeline for some of these longer term items.
And then I did have one with, within the group 3, I had a question, just what it was meant by notify other departments about newly certified vendors. Was it in-house departments or?
Yeah, really, a lot of the larger utilities, it makes sense for them to make sure that everybody's aware of that list. For us, for construction, the construction is almost, it's 99% done by CIP staff, so we kind of always know. And we're pulling from that main database, so it's different than, other places that need to inform other departments if they're going to be handling procurement for construction contract. But we do it all ourselves in CIP.
Okay, so this one was not really pertaining to us within like other departments, it's just.
That's right, all the construction contracts
It's
are
just
issued by
the
CIP.
one.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I did, even still within the group 3, except for the OWASA specific certification program, I was under the impression that the other ones are already in existence. So as far as assistance to capital bonding assistance program and then the mentor protege program, I was under the impression that those already exist. Is it they don't exist?
Those
or
are not.
They don't
no.
exist from the state level
Oh,
or federal
oh,
level?
Those are, I know, so Durham and Charlotte have programs in that regard. I was pointing those out as practices which did not seem feasible at our scale to implement, and
Okay.
yeah, there are programs that do exist
do that,
across the
okay.
state.
Got it. And then I think that was it. I think the only other thing that I did see was that the coordinators network, they do have a lower membership price for nonprofits. So was that the one we were gonna look into for and probably we don't need 10 people because I know those were like special exceptions, but at least one person or even 2 to 3, I think is something that we should look into just so that we have more than one person going in and networking within that community.
Yeah, we're talking to them now about membership, and yeah, a lot of the people active in that organization are folks that I was talking to as part of this process.
And that's it. That's it. I want to thank you again.
Any other questions, comments, board members? Okay, thank you very much, Vishnu. Give a shout out to Yinka Iankoya for her persistence and her encouragement and even patience for over the long haul to get this on their front burner. Thank you very much, Yinka. Agenda item number 9, approve new banking services provider, Stephen Winters.
Thank you. Stephen Winters, Director of Finance and Customer Service. So just wanted to remind everyone real briefly of the process that we've gone through for the last several months. We had issued requests for proposals and we received responses from 7 financial institutions. Staff went through those written submissions and narrowed the field from 7 down to 4. We determined that 3 for either price or services or combination of the 2 wouldn't meet our needs. So the remaining 4, the board through its finance committee evaluated the proposals based on the responses to social, regulatory, and environmental responsibility. And staff then had evaluated price, what the banks were going to charge us, and also had them come in for demonstration, product and service demonstration. The board on the social and environmental responsibility ranked BB&T as the one that had the best response. JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America were essentially equal in their response, and Wells Fargo was a distant fourth, I'll say. From a products and services standpoint, staff felt like or determined that 3 banks could meet our needs from a products and services standpoint: JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. BB&T is merging with Sunco and, no, SunTrust, sorry. And they're going to face, and they spelled some of those out, they're going to face some challenges, and their products and services are just not, they don't measure up to the other 3 in functionality and ease of use and those sorts of things. Finally, in price, JP Morgan Chase was offered a significantly better financial arrangement for OWASA than the other. It was really hard to ignore. So we were very pleased that they were also able to meet us on a products and services standpoint. And then at the finance committee, the board had indicated that really anybody other than Wells Fargo, they were comfortable working with. So it's staff's recommendation that we go with JP Morgan Chase for our new banking relationship. And there's a motion on page 9.3 for your consideration, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Board member questions and comments? Guy and Koya.
So with the, you said with their BB&T is, yeah. So you said BB&T is merging or is going to be merging with the SunTrust. Was it, which demonstration platform were they using? Was it theirs or was it more of the SunTrust model?
It was BB&T's.
It was their model that wasn't working. Okay. Okay, that was, no.
Any other questions? John Morris.
I noticed there's a new bank branch open on East Franklin called Chase Bank. Is that the same as JP Morgan Chase?
It is.
Okay.
Yep. And that's the first branch. That was one of the reasons I think we know that we've got such a nice financial arrangement is they are very interested in having us as one of their clients, and they showed that in their offer.
This is not a quantitative factor, but if we give up Wells Fargo and the Stagecoach logo, move to JP Morgan Chase, that'll give us a really upscale, spiffy, little polish to our organization.
Any other questions? Richard Boyer?
So I did a little bit of research on JP Morgan Chase and their economics, and it's not pretty. It's not much better than Wells Fargo. In fact, JP Morgan is by far the greatest financial backer of fossil fuel investments, 2/3 higher than the second biggest bank. They also, just like Wells Fargo, invest in for-profit prisons. It seems to me that their environmental and socioeconomic factors are similar to Wells Fargo. So, and I don't know if I don't think Bank of America is that much better either. So it's unfortunate that we only have 3 big banks left at the end of this that meets our financial needs. Because really, when it comes down to it, none of them are really fantastic. I was hoping that BB&T would come out on top, but sounds like with this merger, it actually makes it worse, which I would thought, well, would make it better because they would potentially have better pricing with the larger the bank. But I don't know. Personally, I don't see myself voting for JP Morgan Chase. I don't think that's much of an improvement.
Koya.
So I'm happy that you said that because in their proposal, they didn't mention it but you had to go to their website, and which is what I did after I had looked at the proposal. And within the for-profit prisons, I see that they're not doing any new funding. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't make them better. And really none of the major banks are better than, you know, small local banks. SunTrust is no better. They're all in the same boat. So with them merging with SunTrust, it's still like major banks that are still doing things that are not socially equitable anyway. Yeah, that was it. It was, none of them are really great. They're all in the same boat. So no matter which bank we're choosing out of the three major ones that we have, they all still do the same thing with private prisons. Now, I did notice that Bank of America still has private prison detention center fundings, and that they used to, or they're not having any new financing for military style firearms. So they're one of those, like, I wouldn't vote for using Bank of America, but I didn't see that really on the JP Morgan side when I was looking. They weren't having any new funding for those.
Yeah, but they are definitely
They're still
head and shoulders above for fossil fuel investments. 200 billion in compared to Wells Fargo, 150 billion in the last 3 years. So I don't know. When it comes down to it, it sounds like they're all pretty bad. So I'm not necessarily in the same boat of saying, look at this much better.
So you're saying to continue to ride the stagecoach?
I feel like we need to look at this, even maybe readdress this. I don't know if this RFP, this worked out, is what I'm saying. I don't think it has.
Any other questions, comment?
Well, yeah, this is a tough one. Part of the frustration I find is that the big banks are, by and large, are pretty savvy to this issue, and they can make it pretty tough for us to really find out what they're doing. We would have to spend a huge amount of time digging through, you know, publicly available research to, I think, to make a very informed decision. Because, you know, for example, sometimes they'll report on managed accounts, and sometimes which are not accounts they own versus accounts that they do own, and you have to tease all that stuff out. So we could spend literally years figuring this out. I think the choice could be, do we go with a small local bank where we're probably pretty comfortable with their position on you know, social, environmental, regulatory issues, or a big bank, in which case it'll be very tough to really dissect where they are. The small banks, it sounds like, can't provide the services that we want or are not willing to. So we'd have to jeopardize, you know, some of the needs or requirements that we have on the banking side. So all that's to say that you know, I'm comfortable moving forward with the recommendation that Stephen has. If we revisit this, I think we will end up either having a similar kind of conclusion where we're really not sure, or we have to be committed to putting in an absolutely huge amount of time to dig in here. And I don't know if any of us are willing or able to do that. And certainly I don't think that's within the charter of what the board of OWASA should be doing.
Yinka Coyle?
Can you remind me, with our banking, were we going to be revisiting this? No matter what decision we make today, isn't it on like a future agenda? Is it every 5 to 10 years that we revisit?
5 or 10, I don't remember now which.
It's one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, so I know some of the limitations with some of the local banks is once they open, they keep merging and changing names. So it's kind of real difficult to find a local bank that stays local. Wish it was easier, but I do see some of the local banks in the Chapel Hill Carrboro City area have merged with other banks that sort of do the same thing as these, national larger banks. So maybe the next time we visit this, there'll be a local bank that stays local and says we're not going to be merging with one of the bigger national banks, and maybe we can look at it, not us, but whoever the board is can look at it at that time to see, yes, this is the direction that we want to go in.
Other comments? So the proposed motion is the OWASA Board of Directors hereby approves staff's recommendation for contracting with J.P. Morgan Chase for banking services. Is there a motion and a second? That's the recommendation from staff.
I so move.
John Morris makes the motion.
And I'll second.
Bruce Bowen seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. One nay.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Item number 10, Executive Director Compensation, Robert Morgan.
Yes, thank you. I would like to submit to the board and make the motion to adopt the resolution adjusting the executive director's compensation, and the annual base salary would be increased by 5.2%.
Okay. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment?
We need a second.
Sorry. Thank you, Bob. Bob made the motion. John Morris seconds. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Board member questions and comments? Yinka Coyle?
Can you remind me where that was in the,
It's made up of 1.7% for market and 3.5 for merit. It's the second level. Exceeds, but then there's one above that.
Any other questions, comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, item number 11, review the board work schedule. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Okay, request by board committees, board members, and staff. This is where the little note was that we need to do our visions update, the full board for D&I. And we're suggesting Andy and I, we put our heads together and try to get it early as possible, because it's very, very important that we do this soon, and also, but also with consideration to the other meetings that we have coming up. So we're looking at the week of February 10th. Does that sound good for board members?
Sounds good to me.
John Morris is raising his eyebrows. Good, good, thank you. All right, so we'll do that. Andy will do that, please. Okay, any other requests by board members regarding schedule? Okay, Ed, do you want to review the, I guess, the next two meetings on the,
Yes, on agenda page 11.2, 11.3 is the draft agenda for your next meeting, January 9th, 6 PM in this room. Key agenda items will give you our first update on employee health and dental for the coming fiscal year. You'll receive one of your every 4-month update on our diversity and inclusion work. Todd will bring you back comments received on the sewer use ordinance, and you'll have an opportunity to approve or discuss that on January 9th. And then Mary Tiger will bring you our proposed affordability outreach program for the coming year. And then your meeting on January 23rd, Chapel Town Hall, agenda page 11.4.5, draft agenda. If needed, the sewer use ordinance, if not approved on the 9th, could be approved on January 23rd. One of the featured items will be discussing the upcoming fiscal year 2021 budget calendar, some of the planning assumptions that goes into that, as well as talking about our new budget format this time around. And some of your routine reports will be the annual lake report, Vishnu's semi-annual CIP update, and a 6-month financial report. And for action items, you just discussed, and Andy will follow through in scheduling your next session with Visions sometime the week of January 10th. And we'll certainly consider all your useful feedback received tonight and proceed to implement the Group 1 practices and evaluate Group 2 practices outlined in Vishnu's memorandum tonight regarding MWBE participation in our CIP program.
anything else? All right, then we're adjourned. Thank you. That's you.
All right, Bob.